Welcome. We're now going to give the floor to our speakers. First, I would like to ask Irma Boom to introduce and comment on her selection, to tell us to what extent her selection. Well, actually, I would like to ask her to talk what she wants. She is a kind of rock star in graphic design internationally. We know that artists ask her to design their catalogs because then they can sell more copies of it. There are a lot of fans who love to buy Irma Boom's books, irrespective of the content. This is a great victory of graphic designers in relation to authors. So first of all, I'd like to thank Irma for being with us. Thank you for playing this game with us in choosing and selecting these books. So over to you. You tell us what you like. You tell us why you've selected these books or whatever you feel like.
Is it on? Good evening. Very exciting to be here. And it's very strange not to have my books in front of me. I only brought a few so that I get inspired. Okay. A book is a book if it is a book. Good evening. My name is Boom, Irma Boom. Many people think of my name as a mistake, and my name should be Irma Book. It is boom, which means tree, and not what many people think boom is an explosion. And I say this because Tony Brook yesterday talked about how many trees are used for terrible books. And I thought I need to explain my name. Before I talk about my choice of the 5 books, I want to read a statement or thoughts about making books. In 1979, I went to art school to become a painter. I had this romantic idea of the lonely artist working in the studio, but it didn't work for me. I needed a collaborator, a commissioner who triggers me. I was trying different disciplines. And then I met this amazing teacher who gave talks about books, why poetry books are small, reciting literature, explaining typography, etc. I fell in love and kept attending his class, and I became a book designer. Making books is time-consuming and incredibly fascinating. It is something I want to spend on all my time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some call it obsessive. Indeed, I am obsessed with the printed book, the book as a physical object. The possibilities and impossibilities involved are so challenging and so thrilling that I find it hard to understand why not everyone shares this excitement. That is so essential to me. The actual process of making, the construction of a book, the discovery, the search for new materials, combined with a new way of looking, is addictive. I'm constantly looking for ways of shifting the boundaries of what technically is feasible. My books have to be produced industrially, both the printing and the binding. Each book is specific to the subject of that book. Doubt is part of my work, as making books will never become routine for me. The eternal question of whether a book is good enough, changing things right up until the last moment, even as the presses are running, anything to make the printed book hopefully better. It can always be better. When I started as a designer, I thought this feeling had to do with ignorance or inability. But now I regard doubt as an asset. It leads to a delay in doing things, so it creates space to think. It's a quest for perfection, a quest that I will probably never be able to complete. But then again, perhaps imperfection itself is beauty. I respect the traditional book, but I don't want to let myself be limited by it. I want to develop further both the meaning and the importance of the book. The insights and structures which originated in new media has given the book a new impetus. It is important to experiment freely without fear of failure or being restrained by technique in order to maintain the vitality of the book and above all to take it further. The intrinsic elements of the book are, since the beginning of bookmaking, hardly changed, edited text and images printed on paper and bound in a certain quantity and distributed. It is with these limited ingredients or tools I try to discover what is possible and overcome the impossibilities. Many times I'm challenged to defend the printed book, which I do not think the book needs at all. After 600 years, it has proven one of the most stable media. Whether it still has a right to exist? I suggest that precisely in this age of internet, haste and superficiality, the book brings delay and depth. That's just one of the great qualities of the book. Often at conferences, I'm the only one who brings the objects, the books. I feel like a dinosaur in a place where, on the contrary, everyone wants to be very modern. Massimo Vignelli had a wonderful quote. He talked about BC, before computer, and AC, after computer. During my ongoing study in Rome at the Vatican Library, titled What Happened to the Book, I realized that the book is not intended for the past, present, but for the future. The unchangeable, static, or frozen content in contrast with the dynamic flux of internet, gives rise to the reflection and encourages further investigation. A book as a container of thoughts. Digital books are often seen as a potential threat to the printed or analog book, but I believe that the real threat to book lies in the fact that people are reading less, or at least much less. A development that may be influenced by the internet. However, the internet has also spurred new trends in printed books, shifting from a traditional linear structure to books that readers can navigate like a website. Already in the 15th century, publishers and printers were complaining about the fact people read less. It was Aldus Manutius, right here in Venice, who developed a new typology of the book, the pocket book. It's 16 by 10 centimeters, very small, not so expensive to produce, and easy to carry around. The print run rose enormously, from 300 books up to 3,000. So for the Guggenheim, when I worked with Rem Koolhaas on the Countryside project, I decided to make the book in the size of the pocket book, because the very first book in the Vatican Library and the very first pocket book have the subject the countryside. It's the Virgil, and it's a laudatio on the countryside. So it was a very good match to use the pocket book. And the pocket book meant the democracy of the book. I always use the term commissioner, not client, because I think of my work being commissioned, a collaboration on equal terms. Through an intensive collaboration with the commissioner, author, artist, or architect, each book is specific. The solution to the design is often already hidden in the content. With a strong focus on the content and the dialogue, the outcome, the design, is a logical consequence. Making books is a joint effort. Without synergy, there can be no energy, and without energy, any project is doomed to fail. Mutual trust is essential in a collaborative process. Trust is essential because I'm aware that sometimes I keep commissioners waiting. During these moments, I am in the incubation phase, searching for inspiration in complete silence, temporarily unresponsive to emails, but then as soon as the idea is there, there's no stopping it. Trust creates freedom. Freedom gives responsibility. Freedom and trust are ultimately two of the most important principles in my way of working. But how to put art in a book? The 5 books I've chosen for this project are books from my own library. For more than 10 years, I've been working to establish a library with books from the 15th and 16th century and books from the 1960s and 70s. What these two time frames represent is freedom. Freedom because there were no conventions after the revolutionary invention of the printing press by Gutenberg. The form of the printed book had to be developed. Typography instead of the manuscript was new. No title pages, no page numbers, no content page, relatively low print runs. The books from the 1960s and 1970s are mostly art books, but I also collect literature and scientific books. It's really amazing how much experimentation is in the scientific book. The library serves also as an enormous inspiration source for my own work, specifically the 5 books I have chosen for the exhibition. I'm obsessed, as said before, with the printed book and print runs. A book preferably without manual work, widely distributed and reasonably priced. If you compare it to architecture, I'm more interested in social housing than in villas. However, I often hear that my books resemble villas, but I extract everything from the printing process by considering how to cleverly handle the printing and binding. When I start working on a book, I approach it from a conceptual perspective. I need to have an idea and try to execute that idea without compromise. I don't consider myself as a good designer at all. I'm very bad at creating layouts. Follow the idea and then that idea basically designs the book by itself. This makes each book specific, never the result of a routine treatment. The book have a physical presence through their dimension, material, scale, and weight. Sometimes the book works, sometimes not, or not at all. The need for the book's intimacy, the paper, the smell of ink is certainly not nostalgia or false sentiment. The printed book is a fundamental and integral part of our tradition and culture, of published and public knowledge and wisdom. That said, it makes my choice clear for the 5 books in the exhibition. So you do, oh, what you see here is something else. If I knew, I of course had my books my choice in a presentation, but hopefully you have seen the Andy Warhol book in the exhibition. It's a book from 1968. It is a book which has very bright colors on the cover, and on the inside it's completely black and white. It has 3 parts. It is a book in an enormous large print run. I read somewhere, but maybe you know, that the print run was 200,000 copies. There are several editions, yes. And that Andy Warhol wanted to sell it for $1. So I think that's incredibly interesting. And the book is printed on newsprint, so it's on a rotation press made. And I think all that things I really like about books. So it's not about the luxury or but it's all about the content basically. And when I read about print runs, as I just said, I'm obsessed with print runs. I thought it was for me even a better book. It's something I recently found out. And what I I think basically all the 5 books I've chosen, they have no page numbers. So that also refers to the first printed books. So the page number probably is for this kind of books not an interesting thing. Also no title page. And so these books also refer to my books which I study in the Vatican. And basically it's the incunables. So the first printed books after the invention of the press. It was Warhol's first exhibition in Europe, and I also read somewhere that the exhibition was very poorly visited, but that the book is, of course, the representation of his exhibition and of his presence in the Netherlands. So, as said, it's completely black and white. And it's a book made in a group, so there's not one person responsible. Of course, the final person is Warhol, but Caspar Koenig worked on it, and a whole team of people who did image research and find the quotes, because the book has no text, basically no essays, but only quotes. So the famous quote, of course, is where Andy Warhol says, "In the future, everybody will be world famous for 50 minutes. That's printed in that book. And also another quote by Warhol is, "I never read, I just look at pictures." And that's exactly what this book is. is there something else I can say about it? I think that's it. But please also go online or try to buy the book, because if the print run is really 200,000 copies, you will find one. And I think there was also a luxury edition with a gold edge. Yeah, I saw it in the Moderna Museet. It was for the Moderna Museet in Stockholm. And the book with the gold edge is super kitsch, I think. It's really not interesting at all. But of course, it is the book to have, but I prefer to have the social housing version, so the normal version. And I was surprised, actually, that there was a version with gold edges. Yeah, it's terrible. Another book you can see in the exhibition is a book called The Xerox Book from Seth Siegelab, made in 1968 with 7 artists, with Karel André, Robert Barry, Douglas Hubler, Joseph Kosuth, Solowit, and Robert Morris, and of course, Lawrence Wiener. And the idea of the book was that the artist would deliver art pieces which could be Xeroxed. And then Siegelab found out that Xeroxing at that time even, so in 68, was very expensive. So finally the book is printed in offset. So the title basically is wrong. It is not a Xerox book, it is an offset book. So I think they should, it sounds so ideal to have the Xerox book. And I must say, I really love it. And somebody asked me yesterday if it was a facsimile in the exhibition. No, it's the real Xerox book, print run, 1,000 copies. It says on the title page, which I thought was really interesting, why printing the print run on the title page of a book? But maybe it is something I also should do, because I'm obsessed with distribution and printing of books. That's why you make books. You make books to share and to put it, to throw it into the world. And Siegelab also had a very interesting phrase. He always said catalog as exhibition and exhibition as catalog. And basically the book, the Xerox book, so the offset book, is a catalog, is a show. He said he didn't make a show, but the book is the show itself. And I think that is a really interesting thought. The book as space. The book, by turning the pages, and the image sequence, of course, are similar as curating an exhibition and installing an exhibition. And that's why I think this book is incredibly interesting. But then the size of the book, you will see it. It has US letter, so that's basically like we have A4, but in America they have US letter. But to print a book on an offset press in US letter is not so smart, because you have a lot of paper, how do you say that, you can throw away. It's not very efficient. And I made a book for Seth Siegelab for his exhibition in the Stedelijk Museum. And I wanted to make a book in his thoughts. So I thought I make not a book on A4, because it is not very efficient. I made a book on the size 17 by 24, which is on a press the most ideal size, because you don't have any leftovers. You use the maximum of the press and of the paper sheet, 70 by 100. And so I thought that's my revenge, to really go efficient, and what Seth Siegelab didn't do. But and also the book looks very black and white, and so it is in a way I had totally Seth Siegelab in my thoughts. And the very strange thing is, Seth Siegelab lived American, but lived in Amsterdam. And probably his wife, Maria Bloom, says, of course you have met Seth so many times. But I cannot recall ever meeting Seth Siegelab. And that's very strange, because he was an enormous book collector. I do have books from his collection. There's the Gordon Matta Clark book in the exhibition I got from the collection of Seth Siegelab, with a signature by Gordon Matta Clark. So I'm really happy with that. But we've never met. I think so, no. Then I go to the third book, Dieter Roth, That's the book with the holes in the pages. And Dieter Roth is an artist, but makes books. So are his books artist books or not? There's always a question. A lot of people consider my work or my books as artist books, but I don't think they are artist books. I'm not an artist, I'm a bookmaker. And not that I really don't want to be an artist, but I try to be an artist, and I'm not a painter. I really think that I'm an applied person. So I'm a designer. I make books. And but for me, Dieter Roth, I also have, I think, maybe almost all his books. And what I think is interesting that he is also experimenting with books, and he is a big inspiration for me. I must say, because with him in his mind, I made a book called Inside Outside for Petra Blaise, a book which has holes like Dieter Roth, but also Petra Blaise uses a lot of holes in her books. So, but I was definitely inspired by the Dieter Roth book and the one you see in the exhibition. And I'm very proud that the book in the exhibition is an edition I bought from Hans-Jörg Meyer, who published basically all the books for Dieter Roth. And what I also like about Dieter Roth, he has one idea, one concept. So he says, Band 7, so the book in the exhibition, is a book with children comics books and coloring books. And that's what he used. He stamped or he die cut holes in it, and that's the book. So no text at all. And but he has many different books. And I wish, here you have Dieter Roth, but the cover is not, maybe not the most exciting part of the book. It's all about the inside. And that's also what I think is a bit a pity of the catalogue you have made. You only see covers. For me, it's all about the inside of the book. Sorry. There's a book, Kunst der 60er Jahre, which is also, of course, in the exhibition. That's a book made by Wolf Vostel. It's a Fluxus artist. So he's also an artist, but also a book designer. The book is printed on wrapping paper. There, in the essays in the beginning of the book have this, how do you call that? Polystyrene is printing on. So he's really experimenting with material. And it's a book about pop art and the art from the 60s for the Wallraf Richards Museum in Cologne in 1969. And what I really like about the book, it's artists like Rauschenberg or Oldenburg, Lichtenstein, Klein, Kelly, Warhol, placed in alphabetical order. And all the artists have a portrait, and sometimes it's a normal portrait, sometimes like the Yves Klein is walking a stair or something. That's printed on transparent film and probably Xerox, I'm not sure. And then the artworks are on this wrapping paper, on this brown paper, but tipped in. So you have this brown paper, and then the artworks are printed on glossy paper and glued, so tipped in the book. So the book is an incredibly rich, how do you say that? A book, and it's bound like a binder. It has this, I think, terribly plexiglass spine, and the book has not one edition. I think there are 5 editions.
I think there's 7.
Yes, yeah, that's what you think, eh? Then I only have number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think I have them multiple times because I'm obsessed with this book, because every book when I see it is different, because I always look at it, so maybe because sometimes it's so dirty and so heavily used that I also like it. So I think I must have at least 10 or 12 copies of that same book, but I will check out if number 6 and 7 are also there, and they vary in thickness. And so I think they always add artists to it. It's an incredibly book and an enormous inspiration. So please try to find it and buy it, of course. And I'm also a bookseller, you can imagine. because if you make books, you want to go them into the world, so they really have to find its way. My last book I want to discuss is Ellsworth Kelly. It's published by Abrams, New York, and there's not a clear date in the book, but I think it's 71 or 72. It's very funny that they didn't care so much about dating that book. It's a square book. Oh, you have Warhol. It's a square book where, like the book from the oh, there it is. It has this beautiful American dust jacket, and the name of the book is Ellsworth Kelly, nothing else, so the name of the artist. The printing of the book is in gravure, so that is a printing technique which represents black, very intense. So there are many black and white images in the book of Kelly, and then you think Kelly has such a colorful work. But then, like the Walraaf Richard book, it also has artworks from Kelly printed on very glossy paper and tipped in. And so the contrast between this black and white and super colorful images, a work of Kelly is very, they really did it in a very good way. And the work is tipped in, so sometimes if you open the pages, the tipped in colorful work stand out. So the book is almost a sculpture. So every page you turn, the work pops up in a different way. And it is extremely beautiful. I'm a huge fan of Kelly. I think I have about 30 or 40 books of him. And it is also with this book, if I see it, I buy it again. It's not that I don't want somebody else to buy it, but there's always something else wrong in the book, or something is teared out, or so I'm sort of obsessed with some books. And so, yeah, the book as a sculpture. And then again, how to put art in a book. I think you have seen a video passing by on the, is it? Oh, well, yeah. And why I want to show this last book, and because then I'm ready, is a video where you see I made this book as a hommage à Kelly, and I call it in French hommage à Kelly. Oh, there you see it. It is because when Ellsworth Kelly was stayed in France, he went from figurative to more abstract works. And what I did, I always wanted to make a book for Kelly, and I wrote him many letters, and I asked many people to introduce me to Ellsworth Kelly, but I didn't dare to write a letter, to send the letters. And so in the end, the year he died, I bought a work by Kelly, and this is basically the work I bought, a lithograph. And so I bought it in March, and I think he died in December 2015. And 3 months later, I had a show in a gallery in Amsterdam, Slewe Gallery, and I thought, well, if you have a show in a gallery with my work and with the books from my library, I thought I need to make something, because in a gallery you buy something. So I made a book with one work of Kelly, and I did what Kelly did. So placing with mirrored images, inverted, and so I played with that one work I own. I made a complete new work using the colors of Kelly. Of course, I called the Kelly Foundation if they agreed that I would do this, and they said, yes, only you have to send us 2 copies. So of course I did. And what I did, the book only has 160 pages printed, but then on the press, I changed the way the sheets were placed in the press. So I made a mathematical calculation, how many times I can change the sheet in the press, and how can I change in the binding make different orders of the few sheets I've printed. And if you do that, then you get a book with 1,215 pages or 16 pages, so more than 1,200 pages, and no spread in this book is the same. So it's completely different. Whenever you turn the page, it is a different spread. There's no one the same. And it's the first time, and that's also, I do this for Tony. This book didn't use a tree, so it didn't use a bomb. It is a plant. It is my own paper. It's my first book, or the first time I used the Irma Boom paper. It's IBO paper, and it's just a plant, eucalyptus, and just the leaf of the plant and water. And it is paper with no additional material, so it stays. It will never turn yellow. It will always be the same, and it has a transparency. And the transparency is very important also to make these different spreads. And this is, I think, where I want to stop. Oh, and the book has only 99 copies, which is completely against my rule because I like big print runs, but this is a multiple made for the gallery in Amsterdam, and it's simply a book. Thank you very much.
Grazie, Irma.
Thank you so much, Irma. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. I listened to Irma many times, and it's really passionate, the way she speaks. And so before... No, okay, questions will be made at the end of the session. Now, before going on to the other guest, I would like to make a comment. I'd like to make a personal comment. I think that Irma is a great designer, a great talent, and I think that two things helped her. The first is the character, because we know that she's very determined, and that's good for a designer. And then she was born in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is a small country in terms of inhabitants per square kilometers. But if it is true that printing was created there by Gutenberg, and in Italy we had many examples, well, the Netherlands has an extraordinary tradition, above all in terms of contemporary books, and it's really a culture of the book. You can find books very easily. You can find beautiful books very easily. So you live in the middle of books. Every time I go to the Netherlands, I see a lot of libraries, bookshops, so there is a great circulation of books. And also, so they are really affordable. And by the way, I would like to mention a group of students coming from the Netherlands, from a prestigious school. I would like to thank them for being here, and the person accompanying him is Archimedes, a great designer, and that's another example of how you can make art books. And it's incredible the excellent quality that you have in the Netherlands. And there is also an award for the best books, so something that is unthinkable of in other countries. Anyway, now I would like to move on to Salvatore Settis. He doesn't need any introduction. We had the pleasure to work with him, and what always struck me in Salvatore Settis is the fact that he's very much focused on the shape and forms of books, and he's always made very punctual comments in terms of books, the shape, the type, the typography. And this is pretty unusual, and I've always appreciated that. So I give the floor to Salvatore Settis, who will tell us about his selection. Well, I'd like to say that I was very happy when I received this invitation, because it gives me the opportunity to be in Venice, to be here. I would like to thank Palazzo Grassi, Baron Kelly, Francesca Colasanti, Jacqueline Feldman, Irene, Leonardo. But then I was pretty scattered, because I realized that you put me together with very difficult, in a very difficult situation, because I feel like a sort of illegal passenger. So we heard the passion of Irma on the book. So when you are an illegal passenger, what is the challenge? The challenge is the choice. Well, you can do two things. Well, first of all, to say that you are like the others, and the other is to say the truth and say that you are a third-class passengers, and they just read books sleeping outside of the boat. Well, I tried to win this challenge, but I didn't win it. I tried to tackle it, let's say, thinking that books have their own wisdom. And the wisdom of books is the fact that the book speaks about itself and about something which is not the book itself. So the relationship between the book and the tale of the book, and the tale can be based on images or a mix of images and text, and the book is also something more. The book is people. So every book is a person, as you can see in this composition. You see this image. So the book is a person. Here you see the teeth, you see the glasses, and we will speak about that later. And the book wants to be well dressed because it is a person, and so the book looks for a designer, and the book is very happy when the designer is, for example, Irma Boom. So books are the shadow or the shade of what they tell. So my choice is based on my biography, so to say. I chose books. Well, I'm an archaeologist as a background, and I chose 4 books, one of 140 years ago, which have something in common. By means of the book, you can rediscover a work of art that we thought we had forgotten. And that's the thread, the red thread. The Trajan column, for example, we never saw it because it is very difficult to see, and the Torlonia Museum, which remained closed for many years, but the book representing it has always been circulated. And then the Nemesyne Atlas by A.B. Warburg, which at a certain point was dismantled and then reassembled in Berlin 2 years ago. And then the famous exhibition by Adolf Zellmann, and then reproposed here by Germano Cella in Venice. And then an artist who lived a short life, but he was able to put together a very inspired book. So now I will try to tell you something about these books. From the more well-known to the least well-known. The Trajan column is very famous. It is about 35 meters high. You see it is a tall column with a shaft, and if we could unroll that column, it tells about two campaigns by Emperor Trajan that conquered a new province of the Roman Empire, which corresponds to current Albania, and it left a lot of traces there because Romanian is a Latin language. This object has a strange characteristic. Also, on top of it, everything is traced in a very detailed way, but you don't see that from the ground. You cannot see that. You cannot observe this detail. Well, certainly you think that probably there were terraces around in the past, and they could see that, but they could never see such things. This Roman army, which goes around the column, and along the column they kill the Dacians, who are represented as very daring people, and every time they cross three bridges, as you can see here. And this is something that we cannot see from the bottom. It is impossible. So how can you do that? Well, copies were made, and small copies and drawings were made, but it was never possible to represent this in a book because it is very difficult to represent such a thing in a book because a book is bidimensional. So this Atlante Fotografico performs this miracle thanks to some tricks that were used, and that I'm going to mention. Cinzia Ponti and Martinez are here with us. So what is this new book? It's a stranger shape, unusual format, 50 by 50 centimeters. It's 32 tables, 32 square plates, where we don't have single scenes represented or drawn. So in the past, books were made about the Trojan column, but the scenes were separated, so to say. Here, every plate is accompanied by drawn orientation maps, and there is also an explanation. And putting together these elements, you can understand the relations existing between the bottom and the top of the column. And then there are also plates which play sort of a connection role. It's a book that I consider very significant because the graphic of the book, the shape, the format, and is the result of also technological effort in terms of making the column visible as never had been made before. So the book shows things that you cannot see in real life, but that you can see only through the book. And then there is also a smaller format that you can buy. Unfortunately enough, I have both the large book and the big and the small book. Now, the second book dates back to 140 years ago. It's exhibited here, and you cannot unfold, go through the book. Of course, I would like to come here during the night and open the showcases and unfold the books. Anyway, This is the book which for 140 years has represented an invisible museum which had been built by the Prince Alessandro Torlonia in the second half of 1800. And the book was published in 1885. And it is the first book in the world, I think, that contains a picture for each object of the collection. It is the largest collection of ancient things, and the museum was closed. And there were only pictures like these ones by Count Primoli, which showed the visitors of some years ago. And some years ago, an exhibition was made by the Ministry of Culture and the Torlonia Foundation. And it was Leonardo Sonnoli who curated the catalogue. He invented this T, which stands for Torlonia, combined with a girl of the first century. And an exhibition was set up, and the plates on a black background with a number written on the bottom, well, for many years have represented a museum which was never there and which was not there. And there were plates also on the walls. We repeated the exhibition also in Milan, and the exhibition will open at Louvre, and we will have a book which will show what you cannot see. And this is a case which is different from the previous one, but very interesting, I think. And now, Mnemosune, which means memory in Greek, as most of us know. And that is the title given to an atlas of memory, of the Western memory. Well, I don't like the word Western, but I don't know how to classify this tradition, let's say European memory, invented by Aby Warburg, a prominent cultural historian. And this project dates back to 100 years ago, so large plates. We see that in Hamburg, a series of plates, black plates, where Warburg glued images not taken from books, because on that occasion something similar to a photocopying machine was invented, let's say taken from papers, newspapers. It's about 1,000 images. And the connection is very important. It's a complex connection, and also the link between a plate and the other is very complex. Warburg died in 1929, and his assistants continued to work on this project, but then, well, Warburg was a Jew, and Hitler arrived, and his assistants were also Jews, and the Warburg Institute migrated to London, where it still is present, and these plates were all cut off and put in an archive, and fortunately enough they were also photographed. And then this project in the past 20 or 30 years became very important, and various reconstructions or reassembly projects were launched, but none of these reconstructions was satisfactory until the one that you can see here. These plates here are a very powerful reconstruction based on the old images made by old Warburg and taken from the archives of the Warburg Institute, where they were stored. And all that was made in an exhibition in Berlin, opened 2 years ago, unfortunately in the year of the pandemic. And this exhibition is reflected in a book, in a large-sized book, 60 by 35, and the plates were bigger. But this book gives an idea as about the original book. And then the fourth book, Nemosum. The first is a monument to the Trojan column, and the second is a closed museum, and the book makes it visible, and it is exhibited as an object together with the sculptures. And this is a different case because it is a case where Germano Celant, when he had this idea, that is to put together this exhibition, When Attitudes Become Form. Well, Celant once told me, I'm doing an archaeological exhibition. I'm an archaeologist, and so he told me about this project. We talked about that and was really impressed by this archaeology of modern times. And they were able to find almost all the original works exhibited in the Kunsthalle by Seemann, and many marked the physical relationship with the art objects. They should have been exhibited here on Canal Grande. And thanks to Ren Kohans, an architect, it was possible to design the spaces as if to simulate the other spaces. And I, for example, hadn't seen Seemann's exhibition, and I had the illusion of seeing it through this one. So thanks to this reenactment in 2013, I think. Well, thanks to that, it was possible to raise the question that is about the political meaning of Zeeman exhibition in those years that we define as the year 1968, but 1968 actually lasted 3 or 4 years. But let's say that that was the mirror of that political meaning. So today has art this meaning? Well, thanks to this archaeological research, this type of art can have its meaning. And this is the cover of the catalogue of the Fondazione Prada. This is a work by Mario Merz in the exhibition of 1969, and the same work of art in the setup of Venice. And now the final book, which is completely different from the others. I wanted something that was more individual in a way and related to a person, a Milarina, that I never met and about whom I didn't know anything. I discovered something about that thanks to Carlos de Contreras, who is here with us. She's a Trieste-born artist whose work can be seen only in the books, and Carlo de Contreras with his association Arte Viva, which is based in Trieste and works in Trieste. Well, this association has promoted the relaunch of the work by this artist, who transforms this fascination, let's say, the fact of transforming people in memories and vice versa. And the objects she designs are various objects. There are also parachuters or soldiers who are designed with their instruments, and they become what Gillo Dorfles called elements of a syntactic setup of pictorial and scenic elements. So this game fascinated me because this book presents also happy materials, so to say, and we can find this relationship between the happiness of these elements and the short life of the artist. And then this is a book with which she plays. She adds glasses, and the book and the glasses are used to read the books or to look at the readers. So once again, books, and in particular art books like those on display here, sometimes are living people, living characters, and they tell stories. Thank you.
Grazie Salvatore Settis che...
Thank you to Salvatore Settis. Certainly not illegally here at all. By the way, yesterday I said that books see the contribution by many people. Usually there's a curator, designer, or an artist and a designer that talk over the book, over the project. And as Irma was saying, a designer takes up a challenge that is thrust upon him or her. And in my personal experience, and as was confirmed tonight, the things that attracts me to Salvatore Settis, and that he could actually explain us anything, and I would trust him. I would always trust him, because the way he speaks inspires trustworthiness. We shouldn't just pass judgment on books and considering them as an object, but we can have to consider what is inside. Oftentimes books are well done, were made, and because designers are as good as Irma designed them, so the outside basically corresponds to the inside, but sometimes there's no correspondence. Sometimes there are ideas that you have to find out, that you have to search for, so you have to look into a book that might not attract you at all from the outside. Now, cherry on the top, I'm extremely pleased to have an artist such as A.A. Bronson amongst us. He has accepted our invitation to come over to Venice to identify 5 books, to select 5 books. His selection is some kind of biography. What he has written for the catalogue is very short, but very telling. A. Bronson is not just an artist, the General Idea founder, a collective, but he's also somebody who's always been in love with books, who's directed Printed Matter, the historical Printed Matter. He's the one that launched the New York art book fairs, so he's somebody who has a very closely knit relationship with books. And there's one question in particular that I would like to raise, but I'm going to leave that afterwards. So over to you, A.A. Bronson.
A little bit of performance art. And I'm going to stay standing, if you don't mind, because I'm so, I need to move a little bit. It's so wonderful to see so many very young people here. And in particular, I was so surprised yesterday to hear that Werkplatz Typography would be here. And can you put up your hands, all the people from Werkplatz? Wow, that's so incredible. You know, I have a long history. I have a long history with Werkplatz Typography because when I started the New York Art Book Fair, which we started in 2006. Did we already have you there in 2000? When was the first year you came? 2009. 2009, okay. So Werkplatz Typography have been very welcome exhibitors at the New York Art Book Fair, and every year they came, the students would dream up another more imaginative and more unorthodox way of relating to the book form, and really enriched the experience of the New York Art Book Fair immensely. So I'm so happy to see you here tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, the book is a very personal thing for me, and I'm going to talk about myself, I'm afraid. When I was very small, I was born in Canada, a military family. We moved every 3 years to another Air Force base. I was extremely shy and extremely lonely, but I discovered books. And books in Canada were mostly in libraries, and there were many libraries and many quite good libraries. And it was lucky that we moved every 3 years because I would more or less use up the library that we had just left. And if you could see, we were allowed to take out a lot of books back then, and I would always have a kind of wall of books built around my bed, and I would spend every minute that I could in bed reading books. Might seem like a strange life for a small boy, but it was a very rich one. I never bought a book. This was a strange thing. It never occurred to me to buy a book because I could have all the books I wanted from the library for free and take them back once a week and get new ones. And then also my grandmother would send me books from London, Enid Blyton children books, which I also loved. And she was very good at, Enid Blyton wrote books for every age group. And so as I got older, the books shifted as well. But I was actually kind of an advanced reader for my age. So, by the time I was 12 or 13, for example, I had read all of Frank Lloyd Wright's books. In fact, I tended to clean out the architecture, art, philosophy, spirituality, magic, those kinds of areas of the library I tended to clean out quite rapidly. When I was, how old? Grade 10, so I would have been 15, we moved to Ottawa, an important place for me because the National Gallery of Canada was there. And still being rather a loner, every weekend to entertain myself, I would go mostly to the National Gallery of Canada and visit a new department. Well, really, I went back through the old favorites over and over and over again. And there was a rather good bookstore just very close to the National Gallery, and I would always go to that bookstore. And one day I saw this book, which you see behind me, Katsura. I've written myself notes. Thank you. So it's an interesting book because it's a collaborative book. First of all, it's written by 2 architects and 2 artists, and two Easterners and 2 Westerners, as it were, 2 from the West and 2 from the East, and it combines art, spirituality, architecture, all of these things into one book. And the plus to this is it's designed by, does it say here who it's designed by? Yes, it does, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. Yes, Herbert Bayer. Herbert Bayer was the designer, so it was a great introduction to the visual book. And I really wish I could show you the interior. I can show you this, which is the hardcover hidden under the paper cover. And of course, I mean, it was a gorgeous, physically gorgeous book, but in order to sell it in the marketplace, they had to do that to it. I wonder if there's anything more I want to say about that. I mean, there's so much more I could say if I could show you the pages, but I can't. It includes many different kinds of source material, like plans of the various pavilions, plans of the various gardens, photographs, writings, and so on. And the building is from, what, the 1600s, I think. So here's another completely different kind of book from the same, around this, a little later, 69, National Gallery of Canada. And it's, the National Gallery of Canada at that time was in an office building. They still hadn't got around to building a proper museum, and it was in a kind of 60s, well, 60s, I guess it was earlier than 60s, it must have been 50s. Glass, glass, cubic, quite handsome, but definitely office building, with not very high ceilings and so on. And Anything Company from Vancouver, which was Ingrid and Ian Baxter, who I think are really, the most brilliant artists, and they've kind of disappeared from sight now, and I wish they hadn't. They did a project where they took the ground floor of the museum and they made it into an office. So they took the office building and they made it back into an office. They installed office furniture and telephones and Xerox machines. And, speaking of Xerox machines, the plain paper Xerox was really just really coming on the market in the late 60s. So they established a Xerox printing area in the lobby of the building, and they printed this book, and the book is a description of an office. It has all the information on their desks and their chairs and their Xerox equipment and so on and so forth. It's a completely 100% self-referential books. It was printed there in the office on the Xerox machines and assembled by hand. And it's consequently extremely rare. This is actually the only copy I've ever seen, although I know a number of libraries that have it. So I think, the question of distribution came up. It must have been an incredibly small run because one never sees it anywhere. It doesn't say inside how many were printed, and I suspect they don't have any idea. I think they just kind of printed them as they needed them, and I suspect that nobody wanted them. And still today, frankly, nobody really wants it. In 1969, we started General Idea, and we were very involved in mail art. I don't really know where mail art came from, but suddenly everybody started sending each other stuff in the mail, artists. And I think it was the communications had become good enough by the end of the 60s that artists really wanted to be in touch with each other. But since there was no digital communication, they had to find a way to be in touch if they weren't living in New York or wherever, and well, especially New York, I guess. And it's maybe the Fluxus artists who started by making these little small print editions and so on, little books and little objects, and sending them around to each other. And it turned somehow into mail art. And Gilbert and George appeared about this time, also the end of the 60s, early 70s. And they began with 3, what we would now call zines. They're really zines, and each of them is a self-portrait. So this book includes photographs of the two of them. So it's kind of like saying, well, here we are, we're the artist, but we're also the work of art. And that idea of the artist as the work of art, it maybe starts, well, it's hard to say, perhaps even as far back as Rembrandt, but But it doesn't really get going, I don't think, until Warhol, where the artist is ultimately with Warhol. He is the work of art. But Gilbert and George picked this up and made it into what they do. And this is one of the earliest signs of that. Very, 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 very cheaply printed, in an edition of 1,000. All 1,000 are signed and numbered, and then it was just sent out free in the mail. I love that about it. Marshall McLuhan, the media communications theorist from Canada, best known for his books in the 60s and 70s. This is his, I thought it was his first book, and in our catalog it says that it's his first book, but it's actually his second. And again, this was printed in his office with a Xerox machine. It's said that he printed about 100 copies, but nobody really knows for sure. And it's a book that was, made very available and given away, just given away for free. It's another book about free distribution. But look at my notes here for a second. The curious thing about this book is that the layout, which you cannot see here inside, is a direct copy from the layout of Wyndham Lewis's magazine Blast from 1914. A Blast, if you ever get a chance to see Blast, it's the most incredible publication. It only ever had 3 issues, and the typography was used in an extremely eccentric way. And I haven't said who did it, have I? Wyndham Lewis, yeah. And Wyndham Lewis was also a writer as well as an artist, and he called himself a futurist. So he was the only futurist who was not Italian, as I understand it. And his writing holds the basis of modern communications theory way back in 1914. Marshall McLuhan stole many of his best ideas from Wyndham Lewis, as well as stealing his layout. I recently made this, which is my version of Counterblast. I guess I can say I queered it. I guess it's illegal because I couldn't get permission, so I did it anyway. And I have a few copies here tonight, if you beg enough. And nowadays I'm living in Berlin. I've been in Berlin for 10 years. And the presence of 20th century history in Berlin is so heavy. And yesterday was Kristallnacht, the memorial of the Night of Broken Glass, as it's called. And there's no one better to represent that aspect of Berlin than George Gross. This is a book of drawings. Again, I can't show you the interior, but the drawings they're basically portraits. They're people, but they focus on, the prostitutes, the street people, the trans people, the drag queens or whatever. They're very kind of working class, but the people who don't fit in. And it's I think a very, very interesting book. And so for a recent publication by General Idea, and I should have brought a copy with me, I made a book of drawings for a show at MAMCO in Geneva. And at the Drawing Center in New York, which copies the George Gross book in its kind of layout and presentation, and for me represents the period of AIDS, when so many people were dying, in a way a similar kind of moment in time. Oh, and I have a note here to myself that the first George Grosz drawings I saw were at the National Gallery of Canada in the early 60s. So that's it, I'm afraid. I don't have anything more to say than that, and I do wish you could get into those cases and have a closer look. And again, I'm so thrilled to see so many young people here, and thank you for listening to me.
Grazie per la...
Thank you. Thank you for telling us your biography through the books. Now, let's hear if there are questions for our three guests. Well, while you're thinking of a question, I have a question for Bronson that we also raised when we were setting up the exhibition, because we saw that the book of Katsura is dedicated to Joe Ponte. How is it possible that a 14-year-old boy finds a book in Ottawa dedicated to Joe Ponte? How was it possible?
The actual original book from that time I have in my library in Toronto. And recently I wanted a copy for another exhibition, I don't remember what, and I went online and I found this copy dedicated from Tanguay, and so I bought it. So you have the second, not the original book that I bought in the 60s, but a duplicate. So it's, I was thrilled to find a dedicated copy, though.
Sembrava un po' strano, sembrava.
Well, it seemed a bit strange. Any points of curiosity? Questions? I have a question for Irma. In Italian. Well, I have a couple of, I had a question about Sigler, but you already answered to the question. And then the other point is that you made an exhibition at the Vatican on books with open books and not only covers. And I wanted to ask you, in the selection of the books that you made, the type of research that you carried out for that exhibition, can you tell us something about that?
Does it work? Yeah. Yeah, so it started all as an artist in residence in Rome at the American Academy. And I had no idea what to do in Rome because it's the American Academy and I'm Dutch. So, and I didn't know why they asked me. And so the first day, but I said, yes, of course, I wanted to do the artist in residency. And then I asked the first day the director, what do you expect from me if I'm there for a few months? And they said, nothing. Do what you like. And I had this enormous studio. But then if you're in Rome and if you're a bookmaker, you're in the city of libraries. I remember that I asked you for a list of libraries, Leonardo. And so I visited Angelica, Casenatense, you name them all. But at the American Academy, there was this old lady, Peggy Brown from New York, a medievist. And she said, well, you're looking, who are you? She asked me, because you're not American. And so, no, I'm Dutch. And she said, yeah, what are you doing here? So I'm a bookmaker and I'm visiting libraries and I'm finding out, yeah, what to do in these libraries, because all these libraries have amazing books. And she said, can I see your books? And then I organized with her a Prosecco party in the studio with all the books on the table and so a small exhibition. And she said, well, what basically, what the fuck, she said, you are doing at all these libraries. There's only one library where you should go to, and that's the Vatican Library. And I said, well, yeah, but I don't know. And she said, well, do it. Write why you want to go there. And so I did, and have it translated into Italian. And so I made a statement because I'm interested in what happened to the book. Because the book nowadays is more a sort of marketing tool. It becomes something else. And the books I think we are showing have something intrinsic, interesting. And that's, I was interviewed at the Vatican, and they said I could come for 10 times. And so I did, and I thought, if there's so many beautiful books, so how should I start? And then I made a sort of timeline, what happened in history. And those moments in history, there are also moments in bookmaking, what is very interesting and where things change, because it started with change. And because those moments, the book changes. Think of Galileo or Luther, you name it. And so I was there, and I got totally addicted to go early in the morning to the Vatican Library until the bell rings at 4:30 or something. And but I was going to the Manuscritti Library and to Stampata, and but I saw all the time links between manuscripts and Stampati. So I had books on a table in two different libraries, reading rooms. And so the staff of the library started to complain, because everybody, it's all scholars. I was the only designer. I think I'm still the only designer there. And they started to complain because a scholar looks for 3 months at one page or one letter intensively. And I was running all the time, and I always wore wooden shoes, also made too much noise. And they really were sort of angry. They were all the time not looking at me, and they were basically avoiding me. So at some point they said we need to talk, and they sent me to the cardinal. And the cardinal is the head librarian of the Vatican. And I went there, and they were all very exciting that I went down to see the cardinal, because they thought, no, well, she will be thrown out. And then the thing happened. The cardinal is a Portuguese poet. And when we met, and he said, I got complaints. Who are you? What do you do? And then I explained what I was doing, and I probably very passionate. And he said, we need to talk.
Hello. I know that General Idea has quite a history in Italy, and it might be interesting to hear more about how you came to Italy and worked in Italy.
I came to, how did it start? It started with Germano Celant. Germano came to Toronto in 71, 72, something like that. There was a General Idea exhibition up. He saw it, he liked it, and he wrote an article for Domus magazine. Quite a major-looking spread by an artist completely unknown around the world, and with no, even in Canada, and with no prior history. And that seemed to set things off. That started our relationship to Italy. And then, so for those who don't know, General Idea started in '69 in Toronto, basically a bunch of friends living together, and it turned into something much bigger. In mid-70s, we had a visit from Arturo Schwartz. Arturo Schwartz, such a great scholar around Duchamp in particular. And he had been hired by the Bologna Art Fair to come to North America. And I mean, for one thing is he was trying to sell stands to, imagine Arturo Schwartz having to sell stands to galleries. That's so demeaning. It seems so weird. But the other thing he had to do was to invite artists who were doing different kinds of unusual things. And we were publishing a magazine called File Magazine, a kind of artist project. And he was very interested in that, and he invited us to present it at the Bologna Art Fair for, I think we did that for 3 years. So we were there 75, 76, no, 76, 77, 78. And that was, so Bologna, straight from, Toronto to Bologna with no prior introduction to Italy, although we had done some, a little bit of work in Switzerland by then. And there was I think I could say a famous performance festival in 76 or 77 in relation to that art fair, where people like Marina Abramović and, all the big names at the time were all performing. And I was standing watching a performance by Luigi Antani, and 2 people passed behind me. I was just standing looking down from above, sort of not sitting in the audience, as if I were at the back here. And one of those people was Lucio Amelio was one, the dealer from Napoli, and the other was Germano Celant, who had written the article for us in Domus. And as he walked by, Germano sort of waved to me, and Lucio said to him in Italian, but I could understand something that simple, "Who is that?" And he said, "Oh, that's a general idea. I wrote all about them in Domus magazine. You should read it." And Lucio turned on his heel and walked over to me and said, "How do you do? I am Lucio Amelio from Napoli. Would you like to make an exhibition with me?" And so 6 months later, we found ourselves in Naples having an exhibition with Lucio Amelio, who at the time represented mostly the conceptual artists, along with, I believe, Andy Warhol and Sol LeWitt and so on and so forth. And so we invented a kind of photo show that we could carry under our arms, because we didn't know what was going to happen. And we took a train from London to Naples, which had no food car on it. And we arrived in Naples and made it to his gallery, and he opened the door and he said, "General idea. I knew that if you were artists, you would come." So there we were, and the first thing I saw on Lucio's desk was a postcard from Sol LeWitt, which said, "Lucio, when are you going to pay me that $100,000? I thought, uh-oh, what have we done? Anyway, we had many adventures in Italy that followed on that, especially in Firenze, which to me is a kind of city of books. There was an amazing bookstore, maybe you would know. Zeba? The art bookstore, big art bookstore. And the husband died, and the wife, yeah, incredible. Like I'd never been in such a thorough, rich art bookstore before. And the wife, kind of husband and wife team, the wife was very, very interested in artist books, and I was very, very interested in artist books, and we formed a very nice friendship. And then I said to her, I'd like to buy some books. I know you're interested in artist books, but I don't see them on the shelf. And she said, "Oh, well, I don't have very many. So I keep a few copies for myself." I said, "Well, can I just see what you've got? I'm just interested." And she took me into a back room, and it was like 200 copies of every book you ever wanted to buy, It was an incredible stash. It was definitely a stash. And I said, "Could I have a copy of this?" And she said, I only have those. I don't have any more, And that was my first experience, I think, with somebody who's completely obsessed with artists' books. Anyway, I can stop there, but especially through the 70s and into the early 80s, I had a very rich history with Italy, which seems to have subsided in the last 20 years, I guess. But nevertheless, I'm really happy to be back here again.
Hello, thank you for these lovely presentations. Here I am. So I was thinking that because you made references many times to the fact that we can't access the books and you wish we had through slides or even going in the vitrines. So I was thinking that the second difficult choice after choosing which books to show would be where to open them. So, and what you can actually show to the public. So I think that this would go to the curatorial process. If you could talk a bit about how you thought about the way that the books communicate between each other. So I imagine so each of you has made a selection based on very different criteria or reasons, personal or not. But I imagine there was also some thought about how they communicate between each other, and if this was a curatorial process, if you could talk a bit about this aspect. Thank you so much.
No, I think it's for the curators. It's for the directors of the exhibition.
Ma noi avevamo fatto una selezione di libri.
Well, we made a selection of the books without knowing what would come from the 6 guests. And then it just happened that many things intertwined, so to say. And for example, we had chosen the original catalogue of Berna by Zeman, and it also happened that Salvatore Settis chose the catalogue of the archaeological exhibition by Zeman and Irma Siglaub, and we had chosen 2 books by Siglaub, who was a real artist who used artists to create catalogs, which in fact are art books. So there are crossings between all these things. And when we started to design and lay out the rooms, we tried to put them in relation one with the other. That's true. We didn't want to trace the history of book. That was not our interest, our point. But then the books, let's say, come from a certain period of art history, that is the post-war period up to the 70s, just because I think that in that period, as also Bronson said, well, that period was a time when the book was really a means for expressing something. It was an extraordinary period where books were used and ideas were put into books. And then I have to, well, and then they told about the books that they chose. Well, we say, well, books cannot be folded. Well, there is this issue. Generally, book exhibitions show the covers. We didn't like that because we think that books are more beautiful inside instead of the covers. And then most of the books exhibited here are books where you know the cover. And if you go to Google, you find the cover. You don't find the inside. And so we decided to put the cover as a sort of a guide. And then perhaps Irma will contradict me very well. And we show the inside. There are ways to exhibit books, different ways to exhibit books. There are also digital ways to show books, to exhibit books. You can exhibit more copies, But, well, it's not an easy object. It is an object which requires time. It is not static. It is an object that you use over time. And a book exhibition is a bit frustrating. I don't know, Irma. You don't agree with me. We don't agree with me, do you?
To agree, but I think the Xerox book should have been shown closed. And because what is nice about it, and what Siegelau did, the book you can download the PDF. You can see everything from this book, and it's so vulnerable. It's glued, and that's why I thought it was better to show it closed. But and because I know that you can find the whole content online, you can just download everything. That was my issue. And it's with the Warhol book the same. It's glued, of course. It's printed in this enormous print run, but it falls apart. But I'm happy that it's open. And I like more the inside of books than the cover. But especially Siegelau, I think the white book, I think is extremely beautiful and interesting. Also because the content is available.
Buonasera a tutti.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a publisher. I have a question for Irma. I'd like to ask a question to Irma. My publishing house is 300 meters away from here. And as a publisher, I love quality and I'm totally in love with your work. I might say that one of the most beautiful things in making books is the cooperation. A book is a bit of a symphony where you have many professions joining together, coming up with something wonderful, at times not so wonderful though. Anyway, out of curiosity, I'd like to ask the following. Irma, how can you do what you do? How can you nurture your talent in a way? What are the recommendations that you'd give to publishers or the young people amongst us on how to nurture creativity and talent?
Give a designer freedom and trust. I think the moment that if that's not there, I really want to, making books is a creation and in collaboration with an artist or an author. But I think you have to give the freedom. And what I experience many times with publishers, they're afraid. It's always about money, and it has nothing to do with money. It all has to do with this one idea to create something. And I think that for me is important. And I always have a lot of discussions with publishers. There's always a sort of fight during the making process. But in the end, of course, the end result counts. But it is, and even for me, working already for such a long time, I have to fight to get trust. And I think that is the only way to be creative. Like artists, they have to be free, and maybe I still have that bit of being an artist somewhere in me. But you really have, if you want to use me, give me freedom, and then we can collaborate. And because making a book is a collaborative effort with the publisher, with all the people involved, printers, binders, etc. So, but it's a mutual thing, and I think when that happens, when it's mutual, that works. Maybe we have a mutual friend, Rem Koolhaas. With him, I make, I think, for 20 or 25 years books, and it's completely trust and freedom. And we can almost work together without using words, but it's respecting each other's profession and feeding each other. I think that is then it works. That's really, and then in the end, the publisher who doesn't want to spend so much money on the book says, "I want it. I found some more resources, and we try to find and make it.
Sì, non è solo il problema dell'editore, spesso.
Well, often there's the commissioner or the client that raises this issue of money. It is not the publisher, him or herself, that raises the issue.
It's never about money. It's all about the idea you have for a book and what you share together. And
Pienamente d'accordo.
Totally agree, totally agree.